Here's the problem. Industrial engineers are really good at optimizing systems, improving efficiency, and maximizing output. But what if we start treating our own lives like production lines, pushing harder, doing more, and running at full capacity with no design for recovery? After all, we're often told that's the path to success. But all too often that leads to burnout, which can feel like a personal failure. So what's the solution? Today we're talking with Aly Kamel, who wrote an article for ISE magazine called Finding Meaning and Balance Through Industrial Engineering, about how ISE thinking can actually help us design more sustainable lives, not just more productive ones. Because the most important system you'll ever optimize might just be yourself. Welcome to Problem Solved. Well, today's conversation is a little bit different and very intentional. We talk a lot on Problem Solved about optimizing systems, processes, and organizations. But what happens when the system you're trying to design is your own life? Our guest today is Aly Kamel, an industrial and management engineering student at the Arab Academy for Science and Technology. Aly has completed 6 Sigma white and yellow belt certifications, and he's deeply interested in the intersection of engineering, efficiency, and human-centered designs. So what really stood out to us is how Aly applies industrial engineering principles not just to coursework or industry problems, but to questions of balance, burnout, and meaning. He recently wrote an article for ISE magazine called Finding Meaning and Balance Through Industrial Engineering. And in this article, he reframes ISE as a mindset for designing a sustainable life. So, Aly, welcome to Problem Solved, and we're really glad that you're here.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. It's been, a really nice opportunity to be joining you in this podcast.
So before we get into systems and framework, can you tell our listeners where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, I'm joining you today from Egypt. I'm a student in the ISE Chapter 701, which is based in the Arab Academy for Science and Technology, the main campus.
That's so neat. We really appreciate all of our international members and international listeners, so that's really, really neat to hear. And when you're not studying or thinking about systems, what helps you reset and recharge? What do you like to do?
Well, it's actually a couple of things. I like to actually hang out and live like a normal teen's life. I also like to go to the gym. I like training a lot. Also, in my really, really, really free time, I just look at the world. I just sit around the balcony. I just
kind of breathe and take it in.
Yeah, moment of relaxation.
Yeah. So as we said, you are a student now, but let's rewind a bit and talk about when you first stepped into the field. So when you first entered industrial engineering, what did you think that the discipline was going to be about? And how close or how far away was that from the reality that you experienced?
Well, I actually thought at first industrial engineering was mostly about efficiency, reducing time, cutting waste, improving productivity on paper. And I think that's just a part of it. And the reality of it is actually deeper, knowing that, I'm in the field now. I'm in the field, I'm studying and just exploring more and more topics in the field. Also, it's actually about decision-making under constraints and understanding the system, where the system actually includes people, not just actually processes. The realization of that actually completely changed how I see the field.
So was there a specific moment, either in or out of the classroom, when you realized that ISE wasn't just a technical skill, but it was a way of thinking about other areas of life?
I think there was actually a moment that I was treating myself as a machine, not a human system. That's when ISE stopped being just coursework and became, most importantly, a lens for self-awareness. For example, during my recent final exams that actually have been just really, really daunting me, I realized I was treating my study schedule as a manufacturing plant. I wasn't just, studying and just putting the pen and paper to the test or something. I was optimizing my energy levels managing inputs, and trying to maximize my grade outputs as much as possible, of course.
So your end goal was the grade. So that makes sense because finals are like a really, really intense activity.
Yeah,
So you would notice those parallels. Like if you're not giving yourself enough recovery time, you would have poorer performance and that kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you think that like engineers and other maybe high achieving problem solvers, do you think that they're especially prone to like burnout during like really intense activities?
yeah. I think so, actually, because
Yeah.
we as humans, engineers, and high problem solvers or high achieving people are actually like, trained to push systems to their absolute limits and optimize them continuously. The problem is that we often apply that mindset inward without accounting for human limits. We actually like push ourselves more than usual, more than our limits. So what happens is that we confuse discipline with constant pressure. And that's a really fast path to burnout, I think.
Right. Yeah, because it's just kind of a built-in way of thinking.
Yeah,
It's kind of what we're told. That's the path to success is
yeah,
just to always push yourself farther and farther. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk about the article that you wrote for ISE magazine. It's called Finding Meaning and Balance Through Industrial Engineering. Can you just kind of recap your article quickly?
My article explains how industrial engineering methods can actually help students find balance. Students, not just students, not everyone else in life, find balance and purpose in their daily lives. So, treating life like a system where you can manage time carefully and perfectly and focus on activities that actually add real value. A key part of this is the input process output model, which actually like turns unclear goals into healthy routines by setting up clear priorities and taking intentional breaks. Eventually, this process or this approach shows that true efficiency is about doing the right things while understanding the people like machines, which actually I quote, cannot run at full speed forever.
Right. People are not machines.
Yeah.
I enjoyed your article and it resonated with me, maybe because I read it at the beginning of the new year. And sort of at the new year is when you're sort of making goals to, better yourself.
Yeah.
And it sort of had a really holistic approach. And so it resonated with me and it probably resonated with a lot of people. So while most of our listeners are industrial engineers, but for those who may not be familiar with the model input, process, output. Could you just briefly explain how that's used in industry?
Thinking of analogy right now, but I don't know. Maybe like something making a tea or something. Maybe baking a cake. I think
Mm-hmm.
baking a cake is actually like better. Okay. So there's actually like more inputs. So baking a cake actually requires inputs, process, and outputs. So first, I'm gonna talk about the inputs, which are actually like the ingredients in general: flour, sugar, eggs. Secondly, the process is like the recipe in the oven. If the output, which is the cake itself, tastes bad or something, or just tastes stale or whatever, we just don't yell and shout at it for being bad. We look at the recipe, we look at the inputs, and just decide what happened, and maybe like check if the eggs were raw for something, or maybe the sugar expired, or maybe the flour expired actually too. So the main goal is to fix the cause so that the result takes care of itself. And I think we rarely apply this logic to ourselves.
I think you're right that once you think about it, it really does seem like a very logical metaphor to apply it to ourselves. But I think a lot of people don't really quite see it. But once you reframe that same model, input, process, output, in your personal life, what does that look like when the system is you as a person?
Well, if when the system is me or like humans or you, the inputs become like sleep, energy, focus, and the environment itself. I think the process is how you work or how you think and how you recover. It's like just the thing that you actually like do. The output isn't just like something like certifications, grades, or achievements. Maybe some research, I don't know. But I think it's actually like clarity, health, and long term growth. If the inputs are poor, well, no amount of discipline fixes the output, which is the thing I explained with the cake analogy, the last question.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, it's a much more holistic approach. So can you think of like a real life example that maybe you can walk the listeners through, maybe in your personal life, maybe a moment where you realized something in your life was inefficient or unsustainable or misaligned, and how you redesigned that system for a better output?
Well, there was this moment when I decided to transfer my major in college to industrial management engineering. At first, I was on a different path, and I realized the system I was in, the courses of that major, and how my focus was like at that time wasn't aligned with how I naturally think or solve problems. Uh, I felt it was like forcing a specific output, into a process that didn't fit my inputs. Making that transfer wasn't easy for me. It required evaluating what I valued, understanding where my skills and mindset would actually thrive, and also designing a path that made sense long term. I think that decision taught me a lot about personal systems, and that sometimes best optimization isn't changing what you're doing, but redesigning the system itself to match your inputs and strength. After that, I think everything I approached felt like more intentional.
So in industry, the term value added is pretty clear, but how did you learn to define value added activities in life, especially when they don't always look productive on paper?
I think one moment that actually like stood out at that value added question was realizing how small choices compound over time. I think I started auditing my time like an inventory check. I would ask a simple question like every hangout after. I would say, did this energize me or this drain me? I realized the
Mm-hmm.
things I was doing, like leisure or doom scrolling, that term, or maybe like something like social events, were out of obligation. I thought they were actually like high costs that gave me zero return. But
Mm-hmm.
turns out my thought was actually like true. I mean, once I cut those out, the system of my life ran more smoother because I wasn't wasting fuel on things that didn't move the needle.
Yeah. Or I guess even like at the beginning when I asked you what you do to reset and recharge, and you said just like sit outside and like
Yeah,
take in the world.
exactly.
Like that doesn't look like value added on paper, but you said that it's something that recharges you.
Yeah.
So then it's value. So we've talked a lot about efficiency, but how do you ensure the system is made for meaning, not just getting stuff done? And how do you choose what actually goes into into the system?
I think it actually comes down to the objectives.
Hmm.
And maybe something like in engineering, you could optimize a machine for speed over precision, this or that. You could actually like rarely get both. So if you don't get or choose meaning as your goal, your brain defaults to speed. You just become more faster.
Right. So, what happens when people do optimize speed or output instead of sustainability?
I think they get short-term wins and long-term damage. The system actually it looks efficient, but it collapses at the end. I think burnout isn't a personal failure. I think it's more of a system outcome or predictable system outcome.
So, I mean, what I really appreciate about what you're saying is that it does challenge the idea that more output is better, because that theme really shows up everywhere. It's hard to get away from, but like we said before, humans are not machines, and no system can run at max capacity forever. So there are a lot of high performers probably listening to this episode. There's students, there's people in all stages of their career listening, there's leaders. And it might feel natural for them to push the limits because that's what we're told the path to success is. So how should we reconcile ambition with human constraints?
Reflecting on what I said, the last question, I think that students and high performers and people in general often push past limits without even realizing it. But I think I found the key is treating constraints as a part of the design or the system, not obstacles, which was a really big problem I actually noticed during some part of my life. It's also about choosing where to invest energy and where to step back. And so ambition doesn't come out at the cost of sustainability. By treating constraints as design inputs, not weaknesses, ambition isn't recovery without strength. I think it's more of poor system design. Sustainable ambition respects limits and plans about them. In practice, it comes down to being intentional with how I spend my time and resources, focusing on what truly adds value rather than stretching myself across everything.
Yeah. You write about balance not being a failure of discipline, but a design choice. And that's a very powerful idea. So can you unpack that just a little bit more for us?
Yeah. In my article, I frame balance as a lesson saying no production line can run at maximum output without breaking down.
Yeah.
And neither can a student or a high performer. So therefore, recognizing limits and scheduling breaks are not failures of discipline, but they are necessary for sustainability. Instead of relying on willpower to push through exhaustion, we must actively design intentional pauses or breaks into our routine to ensure long-term success rather than burnout. Exactly like a machine running in a factory, we need to make it rest, maybe maintenance, whatever it takes, so that nothing unexpected happens. Balance isn't just giving up, it's choosing longevity and continuity over burnout.
Yeah. So, going along with our analogy, is there a risk in treating life too much like a system? I mean, can this analogy go too far? And if so, where does the analogy break down?
Yeah, there's actually a risk of doing that. I think if you try to optimize everything in life, you become more of a robot, not like a human. You can't optimize something like a conversation with someone, or maybe something like a walk in a park, driving a car, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are valuable because they are inefficient and unstructured. I've learned that systems are there to handle the logistics of life so that you have the freedom to enjoy the messy, unpredictable parts in life without stress. So I think you should use the system to manage your work, not your joy.
So in a factory, we have alarms and things like that flash before, give us a warning before the machines break. So what are the alarms in in human life. So how can our listeners spot the warning signs before their personal system breaks down?
I think signs like bad sleep or irritability are the loud alarms.
Yeah.
So the subtle ones come first, like something like dreading hobbies and something you usually enjoy and turning into something numb. Reflecting back to the factory when the when the red light flashes, we shut down the machine to fix it. And in life, we tend to put the tape over the light and keep running.
Oh.
So we have to, yeah, we have to learn those feelings as something, as maintenance data, not weakness.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot here, from systems thinking to burnout to sustainability. Let's kind of close with some practical advice for listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed right now. So if somebody is listening, a student or a professional, if they're kind of feeling if it's resonating with somebody and they're feeling overwhelmed, where can they start to apply what we've been talking about?
I think, something like fixing their inputs. Something, again, like sleep, environment, and expectations. I think they don't really need to redesign their whole life again from scratch. But I think that they need to stabilize the system first by fixing their inputs, of course.
Yeah. And how do you think that we should do you think that we should redefine the word success? And if so, how should we redefine the word success?
Well, success should mean consistency and not intensity for me. But a life that you can maintain is actually like more impressive than one that looks briefly good on paper and then collapses.
Mm-hmm.
I could relate to that to a car engine. When you redline a sports car to 200 miles an hour, the engine blows up after 10 minutes. So that's not performance. That's failure.
Mm-hmm.
Comparing that to a reliable car that actually like gets you to the destination you want every single day is infinitely more valuable than a fast one that spends all that time in the shop. So we need to stop praising the speed of the burnout and start praising the reliability of balance.
Yeah. All right. So if you could leave our listeners with one design principle for their own lives, what would that be?
Is to design on the long run. I mean, I think the most important system you'll ever optimize isn't your job or your career. It's yourself.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. We went through a lot of analogies today.
Yeah, I mean, I know. From the cake and the car and the
Yeah.
so there are a lot.
That was great. It was great. Well,
Yeah.
Aly, this has been such a great and thoughtful conversation, and I really appreciate it. I know our listeners did too. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for
You're
sharing
welcome.
this perspective with us.
Thanks.
If today's conversation resonated with you, we encourage you to read Aly's full article in ISE Magazine from the November 2025 issue titled Finding Meaning and Balance Through Industrial Engineering. And as always, whether you're optimizing a hospital system, a supply chain, or your own daily routine, every great solution is a story worth telling. Thanks to our guest, Aly Kamel, and thank you for listening to Problem Solved.